The MotoGP world has once again been shaken by explosive comments from MotoGP legend Valentino Rossi. The man who for years was known as the fiercest rival of Marc Márquez has now stepped into the spotlight and delivered remarks that immediately set the paddock on fire. This was not a typical jab, nor another psychological war like in the past, but an honest assessment that many people see as a signal that Marc Márquez's 2026 season may truly be hanging by a thread. Could this really be the sign that the Marc Márquez era is beginning to come to an end in MotoGP 2026? Let's discuss. If we look back at last season, everything actually seemed perfect for Marc Márquez. After joining the Ducati Lenovo team, many believed his career would come back to life, and Marc proved all the doubters wrong. Riding the Desmosedici, widely considered the best bike on the grid, Marc immediately looked dangerous again. He returned to winning races, fighting at the front, and even managed to match Valentino Rossi's number of world titles. It was a huge moment that made many believe Marc was only one step away from becoming the most successful rider of the modern MotoGP era. Ducati had the fastest bike, and Marc had a champion's mentality. That combination should have marked the beginning of a new era of domination. But MotoGP is never that simple. In racing, speed is not the only thing that matters. The human body has limits, and everything started to change after Marc Márquez's terrifying crash in Mandalika at the end of 2025. That accident became the turning point that destroyed the baby alien's momentum. The serious injury forced Marc to stay out for quite a long time, and ever since then, he has never truly returned to 100% fitness. Even when the 2026 season began, many people started noticing something different about Marc Márquez. He was no longer as aggressive as before. He began struggling to fight at the front of the pack. Podium finishes, which once seemed easy for him, suddenly became incredibly difficult to achieve. And the situation became even more shocking after the sprint race at 24 Hours of Le Mans. Le Mans became the moment that opened many people's eyes to the true condition Marc Márquez was dealing with. After suffering another crash, it was finally revealed that Marc had been racing while enduring intense pain in his shoulder. There were even claims that he was racing with only 1.5 arms. Just imagine it, a MotoGP rider trying to control the wildest prototype motorcycle in the world while dealing with nerves and a shoulder that had not fully recovered. At speeds exceeding 300 km per hour, even the slightest issue with a rider's hand can lead to disaster. And that has now become Ducati's worst nightmare. Marc ultimately had to undergo 2 surgeries at the same time: foot surgery due to a fractured 5th metacarpal bone, and shoulder surgery because an old surgical screw had shifted and was pressing against the radial nerve. The nerve issue has become the biggest concern, because if hand mobility is compromised, motorcycle control is destroyed as well. Ducati has therefore become extremely cautious in determining Marc's comeback timeline. Even now, his chances of racing at Italian Motorcycle Grand Prix are still being monitored through final medical evaluations before the race weekend. And in the middle of this difficult situation, Valentino Rossi finally spoke out. What shocked many people was Rossi openly admitting that Marc is currently going through the hardest period of his career. According to the doctor, Marc's chances of becoming dominant again this season are very small, considering the physical problems that have continued since the massive crash that changed everything. Naturally, Rossi's comments immediately grabbed the attention of MotoGP fans around the world, because everyone knows that the relationship between Rossi and Márquez is far more than an ordinary rivalry. This is the fiercest rivalry in modern MotoGP history, one filled with controversy, drama, mind games, and unforgettable incidents that racing fans still talk about to this day. But this time, the situation feels different. For the first time in years, Rossi no longer sounded like an enemy, but like someone who truly understands the suffering of a rider whose body is slowly being broken down by the brutality of MotoGP. Valentino Rossi has finally spoken about the condition of his longtime rival, Márquez, and his comments instantly became major headlines across the MotoGP world. Rossi believes Marc is currently going through an extremely difficult phase in his career. It is not just about race results or the pressure of competition, but also about a physical condition that continues to be tested after the long series of injuries that have impacted his career over the last several seasons. According to Rossi, Marc's current situation is far more difficult than it was a few years ago. The doctor understands that age and accumulated injuries make recovery much harder than when Marc was still at the peak of his physical performance. At 33 years old, a rider's body can no longer recover as quickly as before, while the demands of modern MotoGP have become even more brutal and physically exhausting. Rossi also pointed out how today's MotoGP has become an incredibly unforgiving sport when it comes to a rider's physical condition. Even the slightest drop in physical strength can cause performance on the bike to decline dramatically. That is why many great riders begin to struggle to maintain consistency when injuries keep coming without end. Because of that, many fans believe Rossi's comments this time were not sarcasm or mockery like during their heated rivalry in the past. Instead, his words sounded more like a realistic acknowledgement from a legend who understands just how difficult the current situation is for Marc Márquez. Right now, Marc's biggest battle is no longer against rivals on the track nor against other Ducati riders, but against his own body as he tries to prove that he can still survive at the highest level of MotoGP. On the other side, paddock attention has also shifted towards sensational Turkish rookie Toprak Razgatlioglu. The world SBK champion has finally started to experience firsthand just how brutal the MotoGP atmosphere truly is after a chaotic weekend in Catalonia. The main race of the Catalonia Grand Prix turned into a nightmare scene after several major incidents involving names like Alex Marquez, Johan Zarco, Jorge Martin, and Pedro Acosta. Dust filled the air, bike debris scattered across the track, and riders crashed heavily through the corners. Amid all that chaos, Toprak admitted that he was mentally shaken. According to him, it was extremely difficult to stay focused after seeing other riders lying on the track in dangerous conditions. Toprak even said he only started to calm down after learning that Johan Zarco was okay following the massive incident. His statement revealed one important truth. MotoGP is far more brutal than World SBK. In WSBK, Toprak was already known as an aggressive rider with extreme late braking ability. But in MotoGP, everything is much wilder. Prototype bikes are more violent, aerodynamics are far more extreme, electronics are much more complex, and the consequences of crashes are significantly more terrifying. Although he failed to score points due to a tyre pressure penalty in Catalonia, Toprak's development is actually starting to move in a positive direction. During Monday's post-race test, the Turkish rider began finding a much better feeling with his Yamaha MotoGP bike. He completed around 40 laps and started feeling more comfortable, especially while using the medium tyre compound. According to Toprak, the bike now feels easier to turn when entering corners. Now the big question is, can Márquez still rise from his injury nightmare and return to chasing another world title? Or is MotoGP about to enter a new era without the dominance of the baby alien? Write your opinion in the comments section.